Welcome to the Rolling Track Power Hour. I'm Andrew Scaff. He's Mike Werman. Today, we're again going to push the Royals down in our typical order for where we would talk about them because they are still terrible.
Really terrible.
So today we'll start with the NBA, some NHL. Or no, sort of the NHL, I guess, first. And then we'll talk about the NBA, and then the Royals. And we'll end today's discussion with probably the lengthiest portion spent on the NFL draft from last week.
Oh, we're talking about last week's draft. We're not talking about the 2024 NFL draft, which we've already seen, which I sent you a mock draft that I saw from CBS.com.
No. Instead, we'll talk about the 2026 NFL draft. Who do we expect to go number one?
It's basically the recruiting rankings from this year, probably, would be the 2026 NFL draft.
Right.
How many five-star recruits?
We'll open today with the Boston Bruins having been ousted after their record-setting season, and also last year's champions, Colorado
Avalanche,
both being eliminated from the playoffs. Who are you interested in now, or anybody, or were you watching before? And who or what do you expect to happen from here? Is this?
Yeah, I don't really know who I'm interested in. I know who I really don't want to win. I guess you could say also Tampa Bay, who had won 2 years ago, had been one of the strongest teams over the past 4 or 5 years, also went out, although they were a 3 seed. They lost to maybe the team that I would want to win the most.
Yeah.
That's the Toronto Maple Leafs, who haven't won, I believe, since 1967 a Stanley Cup. So for a traditional hockey city like Toronto, going, what is that, 56, it'll be 56 years without a Stanley Cup. And during a lot of those years, there were only 6 or 12 teams. So I would like to see that. That's probably maybe the closest thing to like the curse of Bambino, or I don't know if there is a curse story in Toronto that's there, but I would like to see Toronto win, especially because Boston lost, but they lost to the Florida Panthers, and I don't want to see a team from Florida win the Stanley Cup. I don't want to see any hot weather teams or any teams that really I see as newbie expansion teams. So I'm
Kraken also.
The Kraken, no. Although we did learn earlier today when we were talking that the Kraken who beat the Avalanche, Seattle does have one Stanley Cup in its history, and that was the 1917 Stanley Cup. And that Stanley Cup was won by the winner of the Pacific Coast Hockey Association, and that was the Seattle Metropolitans. And the Seattle Metropolitans had an interesting logo. It was a red S, but in the letters of Seattle were written inside the S in kind of a snake-like fashion. But they included the S. I would have guessed they had the big S, and then it would just said EATTLE inside the S.
Yeah, because it is the S.
Yeah, but it was S and then SEATTLE was how it was.
It's just an S-shaped Seattle.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was snake-like. So I mean that's why it had 2 S's.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. Seattle Metropolitans. All the teams back then had names like the Americans or the Canadians or the Metropolitans, it seems like. And but yeah, Seattle.
But they were American teams that had the names Americans, though, right?
Yes, the New York Americans was a team that had the Amazing Americans. They were the rivals of the Rangers, I guess, at that point. But in the early days of the NHL, the New York Americans actually played in the Canadian division of the NHL, whereas the New York Rangers played in the American division with the other American teams, such as the Pittsburgh Pirates of that time, the Detroit Cougars, Chicago Blackhawks, we still have. But yeah, it was an interesting trip down hockey history that we've had. We've had a few of those lately because we don't know. I think because we don't know as much about hockey as we do about these other sports. At least we don't pretend to know as much about these other sports. I mean, pretend to know as much about hockey as we do these other sports.
Right.
But yeah, so currently, I think going back to like what teams I want to win in the
So
Eastern
maybe let's
Conference.
go through them real quick. Yeah, right.
Yeah, in the Eastern Conference, we have the Florida Panthers against the Maple Leafs in one semifinal, and then we have the Carolina Hurricanes against the New Jersey Devils in the other. Um,
So are you pro Devils because they're an older team?
I am. I'm also for Devils because of David Putty
Yes.
from Seinfeld. He's a face painter. He supports his team
Yeah.
no matter what. Um,
And also pro Devils because
well, they were once the Kansas City Scouts very long ago. They became the Denver something or other after they were the Scouts, and then they became the Devils. Um, do you remember what they were in Denver? Do you know what they're?
mm-mm.
Uh,
No, I have no idea.
they were Colorado Rockies. They were the Colorado Rockies. So they were the Rockies before
The Rockies were the Rockies.
the Rockies were the Rockies. Yeah. In
The baseball
1982, they
team,
relocated to
not the
Jersey.
Mountains. They were already that.
Yeah. They became the New Jersey Devils. So I think the Jersey Devils is a and well I guess the Carolina Hurricanes aren't a new team. They used to be the Hartford Whalers way back
Yeah.
when, but I don't want to support a I don't I guess I don't care for any of the Charlotte area sports franchises.
Too warm of a weather.
Too warm. They don't seem to support their teams very much.
No.
They're really more of a college sports kind of city, and so they don't support uh, the basketball team very much, whether it's the Bobcats or the Hornets or whatever what they want to call them these days. They don't. They have the Panthers are bad. We'll talk maybe about the Panthers. Um, Possibly improving, but possibly getting worse because I think they picked maybe the worst of the first round quarterbacks because
Yeah.
the tiniest of the first round quarterbacks.
Yes.
And but anyway, so I don't want the Hurricanes. Uh, Hurricanes shouldn't flourish on ice anyway, right? Because they're a tropical storm, and
Right.
if they're playing on ice, there wouldn't be probably isn't going to be a hurricane. Although I guess was it 2012 there was that hurricane
Yeah.
that turned into the big snowstorm that hit the East Coast. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I would like to see a Devils Maple Leafs Eastern Conference final,
Yeah.
and
And I'm guessing you're a big Golden Knights fan then too, because of the recency and warm
I'm
weather.
not. No, so out west, it's either the Kraken are playing the Dallas Stars. Um, Stars have been the Stars for a little while now, but they're still in Dallas, and I guess I would prefer the Kraken, even though I don't like their name as much, but they're in a northern city. And then we have the Vegas Golden Knights and the Edmonton Oilers. So obviously you want Edmonton against I wouldn't mind seeing an all Canadian final, Edmonton Maple Leafs final. But a Devils Seattle wouldn't be that terrible either. But
No.
those would be my top four, with Toronto and Edmonton being uh, one and two, probably.
I haven't been following very closely, but I will just take the opposites of all of those just to try to infuriate.
See what the Florida Panthers to
I
win it
want
all.
all the warm weather and the new teams to win. That's all I
Yeah.
care. I don't like history, and I don't like ice in the north.
I guess they're playing in June, so they might as well have a warm weather team win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Vegas has had a good team for a while. They were in the finals a few years ago against I think
Yeah.
in their very first or second year playing. And they barely lost to the Capitals that year. But yeah, I like to see Edmonton. Edmonton uh, uh, Edmonton has the best player, uh, Connor McDavid, who is usually the uh, you know MVP frontrunner, and he's
Mm.
points leader and things like that.
I think they
Uh,
have not had great success in playoffs, at least anyway, since he.
no, yeah, not since Gretzky left. I don't think they've had any success in the play. So they're also kind of on a bit of a curse.
Yeah.
McDavid he had 153, scored 153 points this year, which
A
is
lot.
a lot of points. I think and he scored 64 goals, 89 assists. So he is the real star of the NHL right now. So yeah, I'd like to see his team do well, but maybe
Is
not
there,
at the
you
expense
think
of
there
the
is
Maple Leafs.
actually like a curse for being like getting the most wins in the regular season and then being ousted early in the playoffs? That does seem to have happened in a lot of sports, actually. Does that happen in baseball? Was it the '01 Mariners?
Yes,
They set the record for wins in a season and then promptly lost in the first round of the playoffs.
yeah,
Boston NHL.
yeah. The Golden State Warriors won. I think they won 73, and one more than the Bulls won. I think in one of Michael Jordan's final seasons, and they lost. I think to the was it the Cavaliers that year? They lost.
That was in the finals, though, wasn't it?
They lost in the finals. Yeah,
Yeah.
or like you could say that you could go back to the Patriots of when they were 16-0 in the regular season. They also lost in the Super Bowl to Eli Manning and the Giants that year.
But not the first round, which is
Not the first round.
that's what really hurts, though, right?
That does,
You
yeah.
set a regular season record and then out immediately in the playoffs.
Yeah, those President's Trophy winners don't they do have, especially in um hockey, they have a curse. I think baseball's probably the second most cursed, because I think probably because hockey and baseball, the games are probably the most random
Yeah.
in terms of what happens, because uh there are only a few points scored here or there. And you do have a series at least, but if one goal here or there makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And it made a big difference against Boston. Boston was down 2-0, and then they came back to lead 3-2 in the final minutes. But then Florida scored a goal like with less than a minute left, and then they scored in overtime. So
To tie it, and then
the margin was very, very slim.
Well, it's crazy because it looked very bleak early on because they gave up two relatively fast.
Yeah, maybe that's even worse, that you get this hope and it's crushed again.
Ugh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not great. And they were up in the series, I think 3-1 too, weren't they? Before didn't they lose the last three?
Yeah.
I mean, in the series, they were up 3-1, weren't
They
they?
were up 3-1, and they lost the last three. That's exactly right. Yeah.
That's pretty rough.
Yeah. It seems like so I was reading about the Maple Leafs just now, and apparently there's a curse of a guy named Davy Keon. Dave Keon was a Canadian hockey center. He played for the Maple Leafs, and he was one of the best players of his era, but they I think they ended up blackballing him from the league after he played for a number of seasons with Toronto, because he wanted too much money, and then the Leafs didn't let him sign with another team, so he ended up going to the World Hockey Association at that point, the rival league. And I think maybe that's where the curse is said to have originated, because they treated
Their treatment of that player
so bad. Yeah. That's my short explanation. Anyway, there are little if you read the news, there's a baby there's there's different people reading about how this baby was born, and that will break the curse. And I guess the Maple Leafs hadn't even won a playoff series in 19 years before winning this first round. So it had been a while just to even have any success in the playoffs. So the Maple Leafs are looking Uh, Good. They advanced to the second round for the first time since 2004. So,
Although they have lost game one tonight and are now down 1-0 at home even. And your
oops.
camera is glitching again. You might want to, yeah, there you go. It's back.
The Davy Keon curse is
Strikes the camera. Yes. Should we shift to the NBA for a little bit?
yeah. We have I don't know if we have any curses in the NBA that are going on. I guess we had the Bucks were cursed with their first round loss.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like maybe Philadelphia would be cursed since Joel Embiid was hurt in the first game against the Celtics, but um, grizzled veteran James Harden pulled out a game for the ages, and the 76ers are up 1-0 in their Eastern Conference semifinal series against the Celtics. Do you have any favorites in the conference semifinals in the NBA? Are there any teams do you think have the edge?
I'm still pulling for the Lakers. I think. Not. I'm not. I've never been a big Warriors fan, at least anyway. So I've always sort of yeah, gravitated to team with the best player. I still think LeBron's the best player in the league, so that's still my team until someone else comes along that is interesting. I think. Uh,
Yeah.
they survived their round one. The Warriors won in a pretty tight game seven. Well, I guess it wasn't that tight actually, but
a tight series, I guess we could
the
say.
series was tight. The game seven wasn't terribly close.
No, that was a
Steph Curry win.
Easy win for Steph Curry and company.
Scored
but I think
points in the game.
Yeah, I think that we have the best, maybe the most attractive teams in the West, the three most attractive teams, at least to the casual fan.
Yeah,
because we have the Suns, we have the Lakers, and we have the Warriors, and I guess we have the Nuggets,
and also the Nuggets. But the Nuggets are probably the best team in the West.
The Nuggets are the best team, but they don't have the star power of either any of the other three teams. So I don't care about them. I guess I've become the worst type of fan probably. Is that do you want to see do you want to see the Nuggets ruin the pretty boy star franchises and advance to the finals?
If the Nuggets do well, good for them. But I don't really care.
I guess they have Jokic, but
name another Nugget, Mike.
Trying to think.
I guarantee you no other players on there, but
I because they switch teams so often now. I'm looking them up. Okay, Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
I guess they do. They have DeAndre Jordan is on the Nuggets now. Jeff Green, he's been around for a while. One of the better names, Contavious Caldwell Pope.
Yep.
Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter. Okay, yeah, that's a pretty good.
Porter, was he from Missouri? Wasn't
he? Yes, I believe so. Yeah. Another player on the NBA also has Missouri connection. A bigger star, we would call him, on the Suns, Devin Booker.
Mm-hmm.
The son of former Missouri Tigers great Melvin Booker.
I didn't know they were related, actually.
Yeah. I just learned that like a week ago.
Huh.
Melvin Booker was on that famous 1993-94 Tigers team that went undefeated at the Big Eight Conference, but then they were number one seed, but then they lost in the Elite Eight, so they didn't make a Final Four. So Norm Stewart's coached teams. They never made a Final Four in all of his years of pretty good success as a Missouri Tigers head coach, but never made the Final Four. That was probably their best team, their best chance. They lost early that season. They got blown out, I remember, by Arkansas, and Arkansas ended up winning the national championship that year. So they were a better team anyway. But
is that what drew you to going there?
It helped, I guess. It got them on the radar. They were a good team. I liked they were actually in the finals back years. I think they lost to UCLA the next year in the finals. They beat Duke in '94, so that was always good to beat those Blue Devils, whom I never cared for.
Well, so now you're anti-Devils. I thought you were
I'm
pro
pro
Devils.
regular. I'm pro Red Devils. I'm anti
I
Blue
see.
Devils,
It's
I
not blue.
suppose.
It's
I
the
just
wrong
anti.
color.
Yeah, I'm just kind of anti Duke.
That's fine.
Yeah, yeah. The New Jersey Devils are more of a working class kind of Devils. They came out. They started in '82. That's like the height of Springsteen in his New Jerseyness. So it's got a. I think Springsteen goes to some of the Devils games if I'm uh, not mistaken, unless he's a Rangers fan or something. But yeah, I don't. I was trying to see if I could find a picture of him, but you can buy a Springsteen autographed New Jersey Devils
Does he
jersey.
go like full David Putty when he goes to games?
Springsteen, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Springsteen wants to pretend he's a sports fan and he likes kind of working class stuff, but I don't think he really does. Um, did you watch his Springsteen on Broadway
No.
special? He talks about how he writes all these songs about cars and driving and stuff like that. He didn't have his driver's license until very recently. Apparently, he
Really?
couldn't drive at all, and so he's got these cars like hopping my Chevy or driving a stolen car down the highway patrolman's picking me up, or hey Mary get in the car, we're gonna drive forever.
It was all like
It was
aspirational
all a
sort of
big
thing. No, you
scam.
never did any of it, huh?
He didn't do any of it.
You
So
think you think he like only drinks like with the
yeah, he probably drinks a lot of white wine and and he goes to operas a lot, and he's Fraser Crane probably. Sherry.
Yeah.
He has yeah. I'd say he or maybe he's even more Niles Crane than Fraser Crane. Although Niles did famously make that half court basketball shot. Did you remember that episode?
I didn't remember that.
So they had they're at the Supersonics game. There are a couple of famous Frasier episodes where they're at the Supersonics, and the first one was like early in the series, and they went with their dad, and Niles was listening to headphones, and some guy sits down to him, sits down next to him, like comes in the game late, and he goes, "What's the score?" And Niles takes his headphones off and says, "West Side Story," and then puts his headphones back on. So that was Niles, but then at a later episode, Niles was selected as having the seat to be selected for the half court shot that they could if you made the shot you win a pickup truck, and Niles he kind of granted it, and he made it from half court, and he was a celebrity, and everybody thought he was a great sports guy, but he was really terrible. I think there was another episode where he was the psychologist for like a Reggie Miller type player for the Supersonics who was in a slump and things like that. So they had a few basketball centric episodes. It's Marty Crane, of course, like the sports, and the
Right.
Crane boys did not as much. But yeah, so I think Springsteen really is, I guess, like that. I don't know. He was he's not the working class hero maybe that he cracks himself up to be. But where were we were digressing. Oh, we were talking about the NBA, weren't we? We started Melvin Booker, and then Arkansas, the Blue Devils, Red Devils. Yeah, then we got
Right.
to
So what about the East though? Any teams
yeah.
you're pulling for in the East? Miami, New York,
And yeah, I guess I want Philadelphia probably
Philly, yeah, Philly,
in the
Boston.
East, either Philly or Boston probably, because I think those were the best two remaining teams. And sure, I
Yeah.
guess it would be kind of nice to see the Knicks do well. I don't really care if the Heat do well, and then, but they've had some success recently. Um,
Yeah.
I think it would be cool if the Knicks made the finals. It would be hilarious, kind of.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably the winner of the Celtics 76ers series is probably the best team in the East.
Yeah. I'm
And
anti Boston in general, but I also don't like Philadelphia because of Embiid, who apparently won the MVP award today. Uh, I didn't like him in college. I don't like him in the pros.
Oh yeah, he was sort of an oft injured uh, University of Kansas player as a
Yeah.
college player. You didn't like Embiid?
No, no.
No.
Shouldn't like anybody from KU anyway. And he was one of the more like wrecking ball type players because he wasn't very, I don't know, coordinated even in college.
Mhm.
And like he would get all kinds of calls, even though like it was just clumsiness. Like he would fall over, sort of stuff, and he would get a call. It is infuriating, but being an a not KU fan and seeing them do well with players that they.
Well, they did notoriously poorly in the NCAA tournament, I think, that year, right? Because that was the Andrew Wiggins year, so they had the number 1 and number 3 overall draft picks in that draft. And Andrew Wiggins went to the Cavaliers.
I think he'd gotten hurt though. I don't even know if he played in the
I
tournament.
think Embiid got hurt before the tournament. Yeah,
Yeah.
or I think maybe they thought he was going to be able to play later in the tournament, but they didn't make it far enough.
Yeah, I think he was drafted. Was he number 1 overall, or he's a top 5 pick at
He
least?
was top. He was number 3. Wiggins was number
But
1
then
from
didn't.
KU.
But then they knew he was not going to play the entire season that
Yeah,
year, and I think he maybe even sat out his first 2 seasons. So
yeah. Embiid. Um,
I just always thought that was a waste of a draft pick if you choose somebody that definitely is not going to be able to play that season. So why
yeah,
why bother making the
but
pick?
I guess it worked out. Philadelphia had some interesting picks, so they had some bad picks as well that ended up.
Has it though? I mean, have they?
Well, they've had a good team at least. They haven't won
Yeah,
since I guess the early '80s. Was that when the last time they won the
I think so.
NBA championship? When like Moses Malone and Dr. J were on the team. They made it to the finals with Allen Iverson
Yeah,
20 years ago. They lost to the Lakers. I liked Iverson. He was one of my favorites.
Iverson was great. Yeah,
Um, he had those practice rants and things like
right.
that. He was a little guy. He was tough. Yeah, I liked Iverson a lot.
I believe he needed that bigger contract because he needed to feed his kids. Right? Wasn't that one of his lines too?
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Yeah, he was a character. And he's yeah. Um, yeah, I miss him. That was actually a really interesting draft, that 2014 draft. So Andrew Wiggins, who's on the Golden State Warriors now, so he had some trouble early in his career. Now he's on Golden State and doing fairly well. Joel Embiid was drafted highly that round. Um, Julius Randle on the Knicks now, uh, former Laker, now Nick. Um, is really improved lately as well. He was a freshman that year out of Kentucky, and also later on the second round was Nikola Jokic was in that draft as well. So it seems like the 2014 NBA draft 9 years ago now is really starting to pay dividends
Yeah.
in the NBA. I think it's somewhat interesting anyway that some of those players from that period are doing so well.
Yeah.
And like and sort of for the first time, because Randall hasn't had a successful team for a while. Wiggins hasn't really had much success either, and I guess Jokic has been good for a few years now, but and Embiid, I guess, but still,
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah. So I don't. Yeah, I guess. So I guess I don't know. Who do you want in the Eastern Conference then? You going for the Knicks?
Not really, but I mean, of those, I think that'd be probably the least bad of the choices. I think anyway.
Yeah, and the Knicks certainly haven't been again like even longer than the 76ers. They haven't been in the finals, and they haven't. I don't think they've won since. I think Phil Jackson was on the team like in
Yeah,
the early 70s.
their fan base is quite annoying though too. So
Spike Lee.
I don't know if you want them to win just
Yeah,
because.
they haven't. Well, they haven't had really like since like Patrick Ewing and Anthony Mason, John Starks.
Did they win? They didn't win anything those times, did
They
they?
got to the finals a couple of times,
Yeah,
and they lost to. I think they lost. They lost once to the Rockets, maybe both times to the Rockets.
that's what I
Um,
was thinking. Was that was the
and they
error?
would lose to the Bulls. So like they came. Maybe I guess that yeah they would lose to the Bulls or teams like that usually in the playoffs or
Yeah.
Pacers because Reggie Miller had the big rivalry with Spike Lee. Speaking of sideline watchers, we saw in game 6 of the Lakers their win. Jack Nicholson made an appearance. 86 year
Yes.
old Jack Nicholson. Do you think the Lakers win another title before uh, Jack Nicholson dies?
I mean, they could win this year. You think he can survive
This year,
the rest of the season?
this
That's
year's their best. Yeah,
they should if they're trying for that, they better just go ahead and do it now, right?
yeah, I think so too. They might have 2 or 3 more years, but but better not risk it.
Why
And
take
just
the chance, right? I mean, if
win it
that's their goal is to get Jack
this
Nicholson
year.
another championship, then
Yeah, I
they
think
better just go
Spike
ahead and
Lee
do it.
has more years left than Jack Nicholson does. So the Knicks, a Lakers Knicks final would be fun. Um, I think
Yeah. Yeah.
that would be the most fun. I think of any Lakers Celtics is always fun. Um, but I think the Knicks would be more interesting because they're the Knicks.
Yeah.
So I think we've been so trying to avoid talking about the Royals as long as possible. Just kind of shooting our hypothetical NBA dream final matchup. Um, the Royals are losing again tonight, right? Are they still losing?
Bottom of the ninth, down 4, on
Okay,
their way to their 23rd loss.
so they're 7 and 23, most likely. Is
Although
there
they just got their leadoff guy on, so they're guaranteed to score at least 4 or 5 runs now, I think.
Do you think there's any hope for the Royals to sniff? Let's say so. We I think we had them over under. Was it 70 or 68.5, something like that?
68.5, yeah.
Is there any hope of that?
It's getting more bleak, I think, every day. Their chance of getting to 10 wins by May 6th is becoming much, much less likely.
Yeah, the by Lorenzo Kane day. That was our benchmark. We thought they would make it.
We thought maybe they would get their 10th win on May 6th, and
They would have to win. I think.
they need to win, I think, all their games now. If they drop this one today, they'd have to win
Yeah, I think they're
their
off.
remaining games
Yeah.
before that date. Yes. And as a reminder, this is Tuesday today.
But we felt but this will air on Thursday, so the Royals could be even worse by then, or maybe we'll think other.
Or very close to that 10-win mark
Yeah,
by the time it airs.
those Royals. And yeah, I don't have a lot to say about the Royals. I guess we talked about Chris Bubic's injury last week. We still have a lot of struggling batters, especially. I think Hunter Dozier has been particularly bad this year. To your relief, at least, Nicky Lopez has had appendicitis, so he is not going to be playing for a little while. Does that bring you any joy?
Well, I would say it brings me joy, but I think it should make the team have less ridiculous choices to make, that it seems to make the wrong lineup choices on a regular basis by having him in the lineup so often, or use it as a pinch hitter late in a game, like where there's no reason to have this guy who can't like hit a home run. It's not even in his repertoire to hit a home run, and they bring him up in the 9th, down 1. That is not a scenario where he should be coming into a game. But they keep doing it though. I don't understand.
Yeah, the Royals did make a couple roster moves to go along with so they brought up so they also put Fronmil Reyes down. I think he had a couple of big home runs early, but it's probably seems like that's about all he's hit. So Michael Garcia has been called up, probably one of the bigger prospects the Royals have, and also a new backup catcher, Freddie Fermin, is up to serve as Salvi's major primary backup. I think just to let Melendez kind of focus on hitting and a less maybe intensive fielding position.
I think he may have some issue with his back though, apparently too, that may make it more difficult for him to catch. I think too is apparently what has been said recently. So yeah, Fermin's back up, and he got into today's game. Sal got hit on his glove hand with a backswing and left the game early tonight. So we'll have to see how major that injury is. If it's just a bruise or if something's broken, hopefully it's not that, right?
Yeah, and it seems like another injury. Drew Waters, who was maybe slated to start this season in the outfield, one of the Royals' kind of somewhat promising young players, has an oblique injury, and he had a setback.
He hasn't made it into a game. I think even in spring training, even I think he was out.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's been sidelined for the whole season thus far. Now out even more apparently.
Yeah. It's not looking good. I think it's the less said, the better. But we did make season long bets. We're almost a fifth of the way through the season. At least other than the Royals, who I predicted over, is looking good. But my other three bets on the year, I believe I predicted the Tigers to be under 69.5, something like that. They're 10-17. They're doing better than the Royals, but they're still probably, if they play at this pace the rest of the year, they won't. They'll probably only win 60 something games.
I think they're aiming right now at like 64, 65 wins.
Yeah. The Boston Red Sox, I think I had over 78 and a half.
The winning record as of right now, so they're in the money. Should they maintain this pace?
And most promisingly, the Pittsburgh Pirates, my maybe new sort of adopted local team, is also over their predicted total with 60. It was lower.
67 and a half.
Yeah, 67 and a half.
Yeah. And they're aiming way over that right now. Aren't they like 20 and 10 or something?
20 and 10. They were 20 and 8, I think, a couple days ago. So hopefully it's not the start of a big slump, but yeah, they are doing pretty well. So 22 out of every 3 games. I think they're tied for the lead in the National League. So
yeah,
it looks like the Royals game has gone to final 11-7.
Yes. Yeah,
Baltimore.
Yes, a pop out too was the final out, which is maybe one of the worst ways to end a game.
Yeah, Ryan Yarbrough started the game. He's 0-4, 7.4 ERA.
It's another one of those things I don't understand why they're doing this. It's like you'd think you just call up an actual starting pitcher, for Bubic at some point, right? Not just why a scheduled bullpen day. I don't know.
And all those bullpen guys have struggled the whole year.
The bullpen is the worst part of the Royals team right now, and it may be partly because of doing this strategy. Because all the guys that they use on the bullpen day are probably worse off the rest of the week, or the management is reluctant to use them in other games to make sure they are well rested for this day, when they could just bring up a starter and do the same thing.
It seems like they threw out all their several other not so good bullpen players. All of them either started the day or finished the day with an ERA over 5. Carlos Hernandez, by pitching a scoreless inning, worked his way down to a 4.8 ERA today.
Oh, very good.
Yeah,
well on his way.
Yeah, all the other guys are
charging towards mediocrity, Mike. Is that what you'd?
Well, mediocrity at this point would be pretty good. The Royals, the first inning, the
I mean, I
Royals.
just mean for Carlos Hernandez.
Oh yeah, Hernandez. Yeah, he's yeah. Um,
The
the
rest of the
Royals.
team is no, not they're not anywhere close to aiming for mediocrity.
If you just take the first inning and the seventh inning, the Royals had a great game.
Yeah, there you go.
They had
What would the final score have been if only those 2 innings were counted?
if only those 2 innings were counted, it would have been 7-0.
Great. Why don't we
Royals.
just start keeping track of it
Or
now?
or actually 6-0. Perez hit a home run in the sixth inning. So Perez hit 2 home runs. Melendez
Yes.
hit a homer. Bobby Witt hit a homer. So you would think that if the Royals hit 4 home runs, that's a pretty good day.
Yeah.
The
Well, they
Royals.
did score 7 runs,
Yeah.
but it's the bullpen day has not gone well. So I think they've lost a couple of 2-0 shutouts, but
Yeah. It was they're
hasn't
1-13 at home. This would have been one of your early days. You could have used that Fountains pass and gotten in for $2 or $3, but you didn't apparently.
Did I save that
You
money? I
cheered
did not watch
instead.
them lose in person.
Yeah, because you wanted to. Maybe you'll have to do a Winter Power Hour live from
Ooh.
Kauffman Stadium, and show us all the action. But
I wonder if I could. I mean, they have Wi-Fi there, so I suppose I could do a Zoom call from the.
only if you're wearing one of those foam dome hats. Do they
Yeah.
still make those?
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen those for a while.
I haven't seen them for a while either.
Yeah.
I think yeah, I think I last saw the one. Was it probably I think Major League 2 maybe? We were talking about Major League 2. I feel like Randy Quaid's character in Major League 2, I was really excited at the beginning of the season, but then I was completely jaded by the Royals' poor performance. And even if the Royals turn it around, I still feel like I'm not going to be all in on them, just like Randy Quaid. That's probably hopefully the only way I'll be just like Randy Quaid, since he is
in that Randy Quaid from that movie, not
Randy Quaid from that movie, because Randy Quaid in real life is
closer to Cousin Eddie.
Yeah, he is a little closer to Cousin Eddie than we would like, right? Didn't he have these weird legal issues and
I think so.
like he and his like wife or something, that they were yeah, he had some problem with the state of
It's some kind of
California,
rant
and he wanted to go as a refugee to Canada or something.
Yeah.
Really strange. I can't exactly remember what happened to him. I would guess I think it started when Randy Quaid was in Brokeback Mountain. He played a role there, and according to Wikipedia, Randy Quaid sued the producers of Brokeback Mountain for misrepresenting the film as a quote low budget art house film with no prospect of making money, in order to secure Quaid's acting services at below market rates. So I guess he didn't get paid very much, and then the movie became a big critical and even commercial hit. And soon after that, he was committing credit card fraud and robbing people's houses and things like that. So I haven't heard from him so much recently. I don't know if he's still acting. Oh, he didn't. Yeah, he's got nothing really since 2000, in the mid 2000s really was the last was his real last time when he was fairly active. He's been in a couple of like non-released sort of things, but yeah. The last movie that he was
straight to VHS.
Yeah, the last movie that he was in that was maybe had any sort of it was straight to video was a movie called Balls Out, Gary the Tennis Coach, 2009 sports comedy film with Sean William Scott as the main character, and Randy Quaid was a another coach figure. Did you see Balls Out?
Did not.
No, me either. Um, yeah, Sean. I don't recognize any of the other cast, so.
Probably not surprisingly.
It was directed by the same director of Jude, Where's My Car, and Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. But
Who was that?
Danny Liner, oh, he has died. He died in 2018, lung cancer. But he hadn't directed a movie. That was the last movie he directed, was Balls Out, Gary the Tennis Coach. So that seems to have killed his career.
Apparently.
And maybe eventually led to his own demise. But speaking of demise, the Royals hasn't quite happened yet, but it seems to be on its way for this season at least. Do we want to move away from the Royals and talk about the NFL?
Fast as we can.
As fast as we can. So we had the NFL draft.
As fast as we can to move away from the Royals.
Yeah, we had the NFL draft over the past weekend. It was in Kansas City. Did you go to any of the festivities?
I did not. I watched it all on television. That's as close as I got.
Did you go out of the town and happen to see any out of town visitors?
No, not really. I mean, I saw what the Union Station looked like with the all of the construction that they put on the front of the building anyway, which was pretty impressive. Like what they built, and it looked great on television too. I thought that was I think Kansas City looked pretty good.
I think so too.
That's what I would say from the broadcast at least. Anyway, did you think what you saw on television about the Royal or about Kansas City?
I think it looked great. Yeah, I watched a lot of it. I partly because we had our little predictions that we made, so I kind of paid attention more, perhaps than I would otherwise. But also because it was in Kansas City, I paid more attention.
Yeah,
than I normally would. I listened to a good bit of it either on the radio or I watched it on TV. So it was fun to follow. At least I followed the first 3 rounds pretty closely. I didn't follow rounds 4 through 7. I just kind of monitored updates and such, just seeing who the Chiefs ended up drafting. But yeah, I think it was fun. You know, again, it's kind of stupid because we don't know who these players are, how they're going to be, what they're going to actually do in the NFL. And these teams, teams pick all their players and they get graded by amateurs, determining, what is their, how good is their draft, these sorts of things. And, these amateurs that predict, like Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, other Pete Prisco, other NFL writers, their predictions, like you said, aren't very good. Actually, were worse than what I had even maybe guessed that they would be. But I'm not sure if this is an outlying year or if it was
12. Your guess is what 12 or 13 picks would be good.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe they'd get 12 right. But I think the most anyone got right was you and Todd McShay in one of his more recent, maybe his most recent draft was, I think he got 4 in the first round. Part of that was because there were a lot of trades, and that ends up knocking not just 1 spot out, but knocks 2 spots out that you can get corrected. There were like 7 trades, I think, in the first round, something like that. So, right, you have a maximum number that you could only get like 17 right. So, but I think I only got 1 right, and I tied with Mel Kiper. I got 2 right. I got 2 right. Okay.
Mel Kiper.
I beat Mel Kiper. Okay.
Because Kiper only got 1 in his his finished draft. He got 2 correct in his 2 weeks prior version.
Nice.
But it was the 1-2 picks and then missed the rest of them. So he then changed Stroud to as the 2 pick, CJ Stroud, to Will Anderson, which I think there were some reports that Houston was going to take Will Anderson second.
they ended up taking Will Anderson third because they traded back into. So I guess he was right in some ways. I felt like I was that way a lot. I ended up getting right, like though I thought that this team X would pick a wide receiver here, or they would pick a defensive end here,
Yeah,
but I didn't end up getting the right one that they
the
liked.
right
I
guy.
kind of went off the consensus, what um, the scouts and things like that thought were going to be the best picks, or what Pro Football Focus thought was going to be the best pick. And I only got, yeah, I got, I think we both got Bryce Young correct. We thought that Carolina would
Yep.
pick him. I was believing some of the Will Levis hype, so I predicted him. And Vegas was also thinking of him as the odds-on for a little while, at least the odds-on favorite for number 2. So I thought maybe the Texans would draft Levis instead of Stroud, because Stroud, there's also been like information about Stroud being really dumb, potentially. Uh, that's maybe true, maybe not true, but the Texans ended up picking him. And then I thought, well, probably Levis will at least go to the maybe go to the Colts or something, but he ended up dropping all the way to the second round and getting picked by the Titans. So we have Levis. So Anthony Richardson also went to the Colts. So those first round, early second round quarterbacks, which of those quarterbacks do you think is in the best position to succeed in immediately or long term?
Well, I guess of the teams, well, Indiana, well, the Colts, I guess, or Indianapolis probably has the best team, I guess, right?
You can say the Titans are decent too.
I mean, he's probably not going to play right away, though, right? Either. So,
No, that Tannehill probably will play this
yeah.
year
So, I
to
mean,
start
the
out with.
team may do well, but it won't be because of Levis. But I think Levis may have the best. He may have the best like career potential because the team's already pretty good, and if he's able to take over, they'll be in good shape. Whereas like Carolina, Houston, or Carolina and Houston at least anyway are in major kind of rebuild modes.
Yeah,
And yeah, the Colts are already pretty decent team. So if Anthony Richardson can step in and actually perform well, that may be a playoff team already.
that's true. I think you could also say maybe Carolina because they're in such a bad division and the
Mm,
NFC is not very good. So you could say maybe um, Young has a chance to be good. Although I think of him as being the quarterback I would have not drafted first for sure, just because
yeah.
and I think he's going to get hurt. I think he's going to get knocked around. I think little guy quarterbacks don't tend to last very long in today's NFL. The last couple of little guy quarterbacks, Tua and um, Kyler Murray, both have been very injury prone so far in their careers.
Mm,
Johnny Manziel was another quarterback about that size. Maybe he was a head case in addition to being a little guy, but I think, yeah, I like the bigger guys. And I'm not sure if I like Stroud or Levis or Richardson better. I think Richardson maybe has the most upside along with Levis, but they also have the lowest floor. I think Stroud's probably the safest of those picks, but he's also going to the Texans, who are historically terrible, that they did have a pretty good draft, I guess you could say.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't yeah, I guess I would say, yeah, career wise, maybe Levis actually ended up being in the best position
Yeah.
because he doesn't have the pressure on him. And he's with a slightly better team. I think Richardson has a lot of pressure on him, and he might be with a pretty good team, but the Colts they've underachieved, and if he doesn't start out good, people, what his kind of makeup is, if people start hating you or start booing you, are you, it's hard for everybody, but it's hard to say how anyone's going to react.
Right.
And,
Sure.
and because Richardson wasn't that successful in college, despite all of his many kind of gifts, physical gifts. So I think they said Levis dropped some because it seemed like he had a toe injury that was not really talked about, and
Yeah.
that may need surgery still. He had a turf toe that he played through all of last year, apparently. So maybe that's why he drops. Like also like these predictions and things like that. I think a lot of them ended up being way off, is because the NFL teams have a lot more like inside information on like mental makeup and um, on injury and medical reports and things like that that the average person
Hmm.
doesn't. So maybe that's
Well,
why.
there were some kind of surprising things that happened too. Like a few running backs went very high in the draft, which has been kind of the opposite of what the current or the last several years at least have anyway shown that NFL teams don't value the running back position that positionally that heavily in the draft at least. Um,
Yeah, and
like
they were drafted by teams that maybe didn't seem like they needed a running back. Uh, Tyler Algier had a pretty good year as a rookie. Like he was like a fifth or sixth round draft pick, I think, fifth round draft pick for the Falcons. And the Falcons ended up picking uh,
Bijan Robinson.
Bijan Robinson, and then the Lions ended up picking
Yeah.
Jahmyr Gibbs at number 12. They traded down. It seems like they could have gotten Gibbs
It took him
later
very
than
high
that.
though. Like I don't think most he wasn't really predicted to be maybe even a first round pick, and it took him
Mhm.
at 12 even, which is
Yeah, and they ended up trading DeAndre Swift to the Eagles a couple days after the draft. So they got
yeah.
so the Lions had a curious first round. I thought they picked Gibbs higher than probably anybody would have, and also picked what was his name, Campbell,
Yeah,
the
Campbell
linebacker out of Iowa. Like tough
higher than he was expected to
kind
go.
of middle linebacker. Hardworking, hard nosed. I guess he has the same last name as the coach. Maybe that was part of it. Dan Campbell likes
Could
um,
be.
Zach Campbell, but yeah, so I'm a little surprised about, but that I think they were the most surprising. I was surprised that some of um, the Georgia Bulldogs didn't get picked as high. It seemed like the Eagles ended up with just about every Georgia Bulldog. Uh,
Hmm. Yeah,
there
they took I think
was,
everybody, right? Yeah.
yeah, and so it was an interesting draft. What do you think? But we had the Chiefs. They ended up drafting.
I was
Uh,
before maybe we start talking about the Chiefs though. I would say like, yeah, how surprised were you to see like that, how few picks though the experts were getting though? Was that because
I
they
was
they
surprised. I
have
was
maybe as
thinking,
much insight as the maybe a lot of the NFL teams have about injury status and stuff like that because they're talking to the NFL scouts
yeah,
and stuff, right? So, um,
yeah, I would have guessed they would have gotten maybe not half, at least a third of the teams
yeah,
correct, because there are lots of trades. But you would think, well, where the quarterbacks are going, you think,
yeah,
or something like that. But it became clear that nobody really knew where those quarterbacks were going, and that kind of threw everything off. And you would have thought, well, if this guy's the number one lineman, he's going to go here, or if this guy's the number one defensive end, he's going to go here. But that ended up being a little strange as well. Receivers went late. But then they were a bunch of them in a row. I think 20 through 23 was all
and running
receivers.
backs went high, which was
And
yeah,
running backs went high.
yeah.
Uh,
And
yeah,
then there were a lot of trades that kind of maybe made things.
linebackers went like we have a linebacker in the first round. We had no, we thought the tight ends might go earlier, but they didn't.
Yeah,
It was a different.
I did one other scoring metric though, which I thought was interesting anyway, just to see how if we were as good as the so-called experts, uh if you go beyond just like where they're slotted, so like how far away from the draft selection did the player that they predicted, where did they actually go? And so if a guy was drafted 7, you predict him at 5, that's a difference of 2. If you add up all of those picks, um, the experts did much better than we did
Hmm.
from the first round, at least anyway. So you and I were very close to each other.
Mhm.
1 point different. My total from round one, 303. You were 304.
A lot of that
Kuiper,
probably came from the Will Levis pick.
that was the one that hurt you, yeah, in round one. And Kuiper was 225, so he was Still not close, but much closer than us. McShay was 233, Prisco 259. And so
Okay.
they did outperform us there. So
So
we are not.
Kuiper actually did the best. You think of
Kuiper did the
Kuiper as
best.
being like the biggest
But he only
blowhard.
got one correct.
One correct, but
Yeah. One
closer.
guy actually went in the slot that he predicted. That is all.
Okay. I mean,
One.
if we have maybe next week we'll have more time to do a little a different kind of analysis where we can say, well, if we get points for position that they picked in the first round, or if they ended up getting a like if we got position right, maybe just didn't get the right player or something like that. Which I think that happened a lot with us. At least it felt like it happened a lot with me. That happened.
So it's more of a team based scoring than right.
Yeah, or like I thought
In a slot based, like the
like I thought at one point I thought Joey Porter Jr. would go to the Steelers in the first round, but he ends up going to the Steelers in the second round. So I ended up getting the right guy to the right team, but it was not the right time.
Right. And like a trade happened too, right? For that to happen, or no?
No, I think I think that the Steelers had the number one overall pick in the second round because they traded Chase Claypool to the Bears at the end of the season during the season. So the Bears would have had that 32 pick, but the Steelers did because that's what they got for Chase Claypool.
They moved up 2 spots in the first round, 3 spots in the first round, because they were supposed to pick 17th, and
they traded up too. Yeah,
they moved up a couple of slots to get Broderick Jones. So that apparently had more concerns on offense than defense, I guess. At least that could be addressed in the first round, at least anyway.
Yeah, Broderick Jones. Yeah, and then they ended up. I think they traded. Did they trade up in the second round too later, or did they just happen to get?
That was their slot in the second round.
In the beginning, but then they also would get. Was it in the second round? Didn't they get Darnell Washington? Or was that in the third round? They got Darnell Washington.
That must have been in the third round.
From I had thought maybe he was actually a potential Chiefs draft pick. I thought perhaps that was who the Chiefs were going to go for when Rashee Rice was drafted. But the Chiefs. You want to talk about the Chiefs now for a little bit?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the Chiefs. We had both predicted Will McDonald, defensive end out of Iowa State, to go to the Chiefs at the end of round one, but he actually went way early. Like number 15 or something like that, right?
The Jets picked him in the Aaron Rodgers trade swap.
Yeah. 13, I guess, then, or something. Yeah.
15.
15.
Because that's what the Jets ended up moving down 2 slots.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when they took Will McDonald. Yeah.
Yeah.
But instead of picking an Iowa State player, they picked a K-State player.
Felix Anyudike Uzama. And it seems like the Chiefs were happy with him. Maybe would have liked to have traded up or down, but they ended up just staying put and taking Anyudike Uzama. Another defensive end. They got George Karlaftis in the first round last year. So trying to replace Frank Clark, I guess, and some of the other guys. I saw a little bit of a few highlights from Anyudike Uzama. I think we both predicted him early in the second round, so it wasn't that far. We weren't that far off, and we got the right position that the Chiefs were going to draft. And maybe had McDonald lasted that long, the Chiefs would have taken McDonald there probably.
I guess he's very local. I think he's actually from Lee Summit, even.
Yeah, so that's a good pick. I think a local pick for the Chiefs.
No, that's nice.
Maybe he can be. He's young, sort of. So maybe like Tamba Hali when he was drafted by the Chiefs, another kind of younger defensive end. Maybe didn't play football growing up his whole life. And yeah, so I like that pick. I'm not. It wasn't when you're drafting 31, you're not really going to have, your choice of top end talents. So it's harder to appear enthused about things like that. But I think they did pretty well. And they got a wide receiver in the second round, Rashee Rice. A lot of the other receivers, it seemed like the Chiefs were targeting or had been picked to possibly get were taken in the first round. Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston, but they got Rashee Rice from SMU, a player, I guess, whom Patrick Mahomes had a perhaps hand in selecting.
Hmm. Yeah, so I wonder if because they ended up moving up in the
Mhm.
second round to select Rice. I wonder if they were afraid of other teams knowing that they liked Rice and wanted to make sure to move up to get their guy. Is that you think that's what happened?
Publicity in the weeks leading up to the draft, the Chiefs were working out like Zay Flowers, Boston College, who I think went to the Ravens, and
Yeah.
um, Quentin Johnston, who went to the Chargers. They had both come in and were playing. I guess when Patrick Mahomes' kind of Dallas workouts that he was having with his receivers, they had come down to practice with him, and so I guess Rashee Rice also did that, but the Chiefs didn't publicize that, so maybe they were hiding the fact that they
Yeah.
liked Rice, and so they ended up. He was very productive in college. I think he led the nation in catches from SMU. So he's a good pick, big sort of big guy, not somebody that we had predicted. I think we each predicted the Chiefs. I predicted the Chiefs would take a wide receiver in the second round.
Hmm.
Cedric Tillman of Tennessee. Um, there were some other people thinking it was going to be Marvin Mims or Jonathan Mingo or somebody else, but it ended up being Rice.
What you did predict them to take a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
Yeah.
they traded up. They had 10 picks, but they ended up only making 7 picks this year.
Yeah. So the guy that you thought that the Chiefs might take was still on the board. The Cedric Tillman is who you
Mm-hmm.
picked.
Yeah, I had heard some things about him. I guess he was about the same size, a bigger guy, because the Chiefs, a lot of the Chiefs receivers now are smaller.
Mhm.
Like Tony's he's pretty slender and little. MVS is tall but very skinny. Um, I think Sky Moore wasn't very tall either. So they have a lot of shorter guys. So they wanted a little bigger
Yeah.
wide receiver. So that's who they got. Uh,
They ended up taking what is it, an offensive tackle, I think, in the third round?
yeah, named
And then,
after your
then all
favorite.
defense after that, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that
uh,
right?
they got, I thought they got, yeah, they got all defense after that. So they're two of their first top, their top two of the first three were offense, Rashee Rice, and then Wanye Morris, and then they had a corner.
It was not the same Wanya Morris from Boys to
With the
Men.
men. That's what I was saying. You was your one of your favorite R&B singers. He was not related either. He was just named after
Yeah.
uh, singer Wanye Morris. Do you think the Chiefs will go to the end of the road with Morris as their starting tackle this year? Do you think he's going to be the starting right tackle?
Um, I don't know. I think he may be by the end of the season, but I'm gonna say at this point, knowing literally nothing, I don't know if they'd go in. I don't know if they'd have him start initially.
Yeah, Lucas Niang is still there. He had been slated as the starter at right tackle before Wiley. I think Niang got hurt, and Niang's kind of had a bit of a injury plagued. He was out during the COVID year, and then he was injured. So maybe he's going to be the right tackle. They also got Jawan Taylor, who is a right tackle, but I think he was going to play left. So the Chiefs will probably have, even if um, Morris doesn't start, the Chiefs will have 2 different tackles this year from last
Right.
year.
What about Prince?
Oh
Uh,
yeah, Prince Tega Wanogo, or is that
Wanogo,
right? Yeah, yeah, he was another guy they thought might be a potential future tackle.
he's still in
Um,
the mix anyway, I guess, right?
Darian Kennard, 5th round draft pick last year, I think is more of a guard. So I think um, I think probably the Chiefs might move one of those guys to guard simply because I don't know if Joe Tooney is going to be around forever. He's on the older side. The rest of the Chiefs line is pretty young. Wanye Morris also, it turns out, started his college career at Tennessee, where he played with right guard Trey Morris. Right guard Trey Smith, excuse me.
Yeah.
Wanye Morris, right guard Trey Smith. And so they were on the same team together. And
Oh, okay.
then he went to Oklahoma, which is where Orlando Brown, his perhaps predecessor, went, and also Creed Humphrey went. So it seems like the Chiefs are liking Tennessee and Oklahoma linemen recently. And
Maybe.
Morris is both a Tennessean and an Oklahoman, a Volunteer and a Sooner.
There you go.
And curiously, he left Tennessee when their new coach, Josh Heupel, came in. And Josh Heupel, of course, had been the quarterback for Oklahoma once upon a time. He was the quarterback when Oklahoma won its lone national championship under Bob Stoops in the year 2000. So, these Oklahoma and Tennessee connections that the lineman.
Bob Stoops, the guy from the XFL?
Yes, Bob Stoops. Yeah, yes, he's known as the XFL coach now. I think because he just wants to live in Dallas or live someplace and he doesn't have to go anywhere.
I think he won the XFL championship this last weekend. Even
I wasn't paying attention. No, the XFL championship game is on this is Saturday, May 13th.
Oh, maybe that was that must have been the semifinal game.
And it's going to be played between the Arlington Renegades and the DC Defenders. And the Renegades, it's Arlington, Texas Renegades, not Arlington, Virginia Renegades.
Right.
They're playing DC. It sounds like, they're playing, it's DC playing Arlington, Virginia, but it's Arlington, Texas, which is, I think, strange that they're called the Arlington Renegades, because you don't know like which Arlington. It's not. It's arguably the second most famous Arlington. I guess that's where the stadium is.
Oh, I thought you were talking about DC, the cemetery.
The cemetery. Yeah, do you think Arlington, Virginia, or Arlington, Texas is better known?
Virginia, for sure, right? It has to be.
I think so too. Yeah. I think Arlington, Texas.
It's a suburb essentially of Dallas, isn't it?
Yeah. Which has the larger population? Arlington, Texas, Arlington.
Probably Texas, because it can sprawl all over the place.
So Arlington, Texas is between Dallas and Fort Worth.
Yeah.
Arlington, Texas, population estimate in 2021 is 392,786. So that's pretty big. Arlington, Virginia.
Suburb of DC, though, essentially.
Yeah, DC suburb. Its population is 232,965. So pretty big as well, but not as big.
No.
Yeah, Arlington is the part of Virginia that was originally ceded to form Washington, D.C., with the Maryland part to form the kind of square diamond. But when all of the major monuments were going in on the Maryland side, Virginia wanted to take its part back, so it took its part back. So it's Virginia, and that's where Robert E. Lee's house was, and they turned that into Arlington National Cemetery as a punishment to Lee for his traitorous actions.
Oh.
Yeah, so so Arlington National Cemetery, it's the grounds of Robert E. Lee's ancestral home. If you knew, I don't know if you knew that, but anyway, a tidbit just right across the river.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, wow. Arlington's kind of a fun little place, but
Virginia or Texas, or
I'd say Virginia. I haven't. Alexandria is also down in that area. I've been to Alexandria. More than Alexandria is its own city, a little bit more than Arlington is. It's also Alexandria, Virginia is also not the most famous Alexandria. It's probably second most famous Alexandria as well, after Egypt.
Probably takes the backseat to Egypt. Yes, probably.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the later round Chiefs picks?
You never know. They picked a lot of defensive players. Uh,
Safety, linebacker, defensive tackle, corner.
yeah, Connor, I think from Virginia Tech is possibly a safety, possibly a corner. I think he's
Yeah,
a L'Jarius Sneed insurance, depending on where Sneed goes next year. So
yeah.
he's probably brought in there.
After next year, right?
Yeah, after next year. Yeah. A big,
Or
they,
after this year. He's got one more year left. So that's what I'm saying, right?
yeah, after this coming season, after the 23 season. I know what you mean. We were meant the same thing basically, but yeah.
Yeah.
They got defensive tackle from Texas. I guess he's maybe a run stopper. Another possible cornerback and a possible edge kind of developmental player. So it's hard to say
Yeah.
what they're going to be, whether they'll all even make it. But last year, the later round picks ended up playing quite a bit. Isaiah Pacheco was a seventh round pick. Um, Jalen Watson was a seventh round pick.
Right.
He had the big interception return for a touchdown against San Diego or against the Los Angeles Chargers. So
Yeah.
they might also just be um, kind of back of the roster or practice squad talent too.
Yeah, they kind of filled some holes that they had, but none of the holes were that deep, I think, to start with, right? So they were just going to sort of like filling in.
Yeah, it's a little surprising.
Well,
Maybe they didn't pick a running back. There was some running back news that they had today.
well,
They
I
ended
guess
up
they picked up a couple guys as
free agents.
undrafted
Yeah,
free agents.
yeah,
I think they've I think signed 20-ish players to bring into like the mini camp, I guess. So I guess we'll see who they keep from that. But if they can find guys in the undrafted pool, um, that'd be pretty impressive, though, wouldn't it?
yeah. That would be yeah. They're only seven. So NFL draft used to be 12 rounds. I think it used to be even more than that a long time ago, but it was 12 rounds, I think, until the early 90s, and then dropped to eight, and it's been seven maybe the last 20 years or so. But um, yeah, it's hard to say. But they did make some running back news. They ended up signing Jared McKinnon again to
Mm.
another contract. So there was some question whether he was going to be back, and they ended up not. This was not exercising the fifth year option on Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Oh, I hadn't heard that yet. I
That was
guess.
today. They announced that.
Wow.
So he's playing. He's on the Chiefs, so it's possible maybe they'll still try to trade him. But there was some people thought, well, and I thought perhaps, especially like Jahmyr Gibbs was around at the end of the first round, I thought maybe the Chiefs would try to pick him, but that didn't happen. So
Huh.
they signed McKinnon I think today or yesterday, and then they also said they weren't going to.
Yeah, I saw last night they said that it was likely that they were going to get a deal with McKinnon. I guess maybe that's become official then since then.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, that's good to hear
yeah.
because
So
he was quite successful, especially that one stretch across the middle of the season where he had a touchdown in like every game for
yeah,
6 weeks or something in a row, right?
I think it was seven consecutive games he caught a touchdown with NFL record. He got nine touchdown passes last season, and that's not including I think not including the playoffs. I don't know
Yeah.
if he got touchdowns in the playoffs, but he memorably almost or could have gotten a touchdown in the Super Bowl, but slid just before the 1 yard line to help melt the clock away for the Chiefs. So he'll always be
Yes.
remembered for that.
Right.
Edwards-Helaire has had a checkered career so far. Maybe he'll reclaim some of his. He was a first round draft pick just 3 years ago, so maybe he'll reclaim that status. But it seems like it's Pacheco as the cemented number one guy right now. So
Declining the fifth year option, is that for the next year or is that for this
yeah, that
coming?
would be for 2024. So this is going to be his fourth year.
Yeah.
So he's on a contract. So for your first round draft picks, they sign a 4 year contract and they can add on a fifth year option. Every other draft pick, I think, is a 4 year
But
contract.
they have to pick up the option before the fourth season. Is that how
I
that works?
guess I guess that's how it works. Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah,
Because I know in baseball the options don't get exercised until after the season's over, I think.
Yeah, I think most options are probably like that for the NFL, but for the fifth year option for first round draft picks, so
That
like they did that to actually something that the Packers did something like that today for Jordan Love because it would next year was his fifth would be his fifth year. So they ended up signing Love, I think, for $13 million this year in a contract extension for next year, with a
mm,
possibility of getting up to 22 million. I think the fifth year option would have been like $30 million because quarterbacks are much higher or something like that. So I'm not exactly sure what if
okay.
it's somewhat related to franchise money, I think, or I'm
Mm,
not exactly sure how the option tag relates. You can look into it, but yeah. So the
yeah.
Packers
It
already,
it may be slot dependent too, like where they're
yeah, I bet that is
in the
too.
drafts as to what the option dollar amount is.
Yeah,
'Cause
that could be
I
too.
think rookie contracts are all kind of fixed at a particular dollar amount for each tier within the round. I think even
Yes.
right because high draft picks get paid more than mid round draft picks get paid more than low round draft picks in the first round. I think second maybe all be the same, and then third maybe
Yeah.
the same. Right?
Oh, here it's also done this way. Fifth year salary is calculated on four tiers as well: basic, playing time, one Pro Bowl, and multiple Pro Bowls as well.
Oh.
So, so like it's I think it's based on a few different things. So like, the Bengals picked up Burrow's fifth year option, no surprise. But Chase Young, for example, they didn't do his fifth year option. Tua and Justin Herbert were both picked up. A lot of the players were, but a lot of them were also declined on the fifth year option.
Hmm.
Yeah, the 10th round pick, Jedrick Wills, number 10 overall pick of 2020, Jedrick Wills, his fifth year option was picked up, and that guaranteed a salary of 14.175 million.
Wow.
Jerry Judy was going to have a $13 million uh, fifth year option, and they picked him up. They picked his up. CeeDee Lamb is an 18 million option. The Cowboys picked up. I'm looking at that now. Um, Justin Jefferson's fifth year option is going to be 19.7 million. Um, Brandon Ayuk is 14 million. So I think it depends on draft slot, but also success and maybe even position as well. So
But they're fixed to a
they're
particular.
fixed. Yeah.
There's like a table that determines what it is
Yes.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's like an add-on for certain events like Pro Bowl selections and yeah. Okay. Interesting. But that does make it easier for negotiating anyway. It's just like it's a yes no question rather than a how much do you need to be happy to play another year, right? It's just a yes no from the team perspective. Is this guy worth this? Yes or no?
Mhm. Yeah. I
Sign or
think that
not sign based on that.
million if they had picked it up. So not very much, but still quite a bit for running back.
Yeah.
Um, so
Especially knowing that you have a guy that you are happy with that isn't going to be paid that amount of money.
yeah.
Uh, and the potential to maybe find somebody, that was undrafted or, bring McKinnon back too. So they did okay with Pacheco and McKinnon for a good chunk of last season. So
Yeah, I think Edwards-Helaire is supposed to be like 3 million or something this year. I don't know
yeah.
what McKinnon signed for this year, but yeah, it was like basically the same running backs as last year, minus Ronald Jones,
Mm-hmm.
and also no fullback so far this year on the Chiefs roster, which may indicate that the Chiefs are going to have another wide receiver position, maybe another tight end, something like that,
Yeah.
which I think would be better than having a fullback because I think the fullback
Well, they
is.
were only using fullback in like gimmicky type situations.
Yeah, and most of those were, especially by the end of the year, they were snuffed out by the opposition. So maybe now also with Blaine Gabbert as the backup quarterback, he may be in a position to do some of that stuff. He's a bigger guy, or Blake Bell being around the whole year.
Yeah.
He's the belldozer, as they call him.
Is
Um,
that what they call him?
yeah, he's been called the Belldozer. Because he was actually a quarterback for Oklahoma uh, for a while under then current Arlington Renegades coach Bob Stoops,
Bob,
uh,
Bob Stoops of XFL fame.
XFL fame. Bob Stoops, I think for the XFL, he needs to grow like a Hollywood Hogan type, like stubble that's like a jet black kind of stubble,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Always wear a bandana.
Yeah,
Yeah, they should
yeah.
totally.
And if you look at Blake Bell's Wikipedia page, in the first three lines, they mention he received the nickname Belldozer, a play on words due to his large frame and running style. I think it's also a play on words of King of the Hill, a King of the Hill reference when Bill Do. Did you watch King of the Hill?
Not really.
Bill, the neighbor of Hank, Bill Dotrieve, he was known as the Billdozer in high school, and he would just always be given the ball like at the 1 yard line and plow through and always get the touchdown. And one episode, they his touchdown record was broken by some kid, but it was broken in a way that he didn't think was fair. You might remember some of these types of kind of gift touchdowns in high school where some like hard luck case or maybe some special needs kid is given the ball and gets to run for a touchdown, and then the other team's allowed to score a touchdown to tie it. So it's no real points are scored. So the kid who was going to like challenge Bill's record ends up getting hurt, and in like a kind of magnanimous gesture, the Arlen High gave him the ball. He was like on crutches or one leg and hopped in the end zone and nobody tackled him. And Bill didn't like the way that happened because he thought it should have been given fair and square. So he actually ends up going back to high school and playing and scoring more touchdowns to keep his record. And
Nice.
so when I think of the Belldozer, I think of the Billdozer.
Billdozer. Okay. All right. Good.
On that note, do we have anything else to say about the NFL draft or anything
No,
else?
not really. Yeah.
I think we could do talk more analysis about how well we did next week. We have more time to kind of look back, and maybe we could also look back at previous drafts and see how many like Todd McShay or Mel Kiper got in the final. In 2018, how many of these?
Yeah. Was this the outlier that they just
The outlier. Or we could maybe something to look at
predict?
is draft grades and see what instant draft grades look like compared to current draft grades.
How
Because I
those
think the
players
Chiefs,
actually performed during this season?
yeah, the Chiefs were given like a B or a C, I think, by most draft graders. Not too high, but not like dismally low either, but not
Yeah.
wasn't considered to be a great draft by the Chiefs. But they ended up having last year a very good draft, even though I don't think it was also considered to be that great a draft. And they also, I remember, given bad grades by a lot of teams, by a lot of pundits in 2017 when they traded up to get Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback, because that was seen as a risky and maybe not very good pick. Because you have Alex Smith as quarterback, and you're giving away these future first round draft picks. And who's this guy? He has terrible footwork and terrible mechanics, and he's from the Big 12. Why are we drafting this guy? And he ends up being the best quarterback in the league by the time he starts within 2 years. So it's
And then multiple Super Bowls.
maybe that's the same thing that's going to happen with Bryce Young. Is that going to be? Is he going to be that guy that who I think is probably too little, but maybe he'll be.
But I think what we really learned from this is that draft experts are not very good at their jobs. Is that?
Or we could say that draft experts are really good and NFL teams are bad at their jobs because they're not picking the right players. We would have to look at success and look at who maybe the draft darlings are for previous years compared to who gets drafted and see it did the pick that the Todd McShay or Mel Kiper liked actually ends up being better than the people the team picks. So it could go either way, I guess. At least one of them is not.
That's not what the goal is on draft day, is to pick the guy that you think the team needs that's
Is
in
that,
that slot.
I guess, but you also kind of think you were going to pick the best player and the player that the team needs. So like, maybe you could also use it to judge front offices, like how,
Yeah.
like
Well,
like
if that's what you're aiming for, then the guys that say that have the draft picks are always right, and the people that and the teams that make the drafts are always wrong, right?
yeah,
If that's the case, I mean, if that
yeah, it could be. Well, I would say I wonder which is more the case though. Like, is it the pun do the kind of draft pundits, the people that uh do this for a living, do they tend to know what good NFL players look like more than professional
yeah, or
scouts?
what teams need more than what teams
Yeah,
know.
because you would say, well, it's the NFL players and coaches and scouts that do well, but these guys get fired every 3 or 4 years because a lot of them suck, and so
Yeah,
it's hard to it's hard to gauge, I think.
but then if that was the case too, then you would think that the future scouts would just follow what the Kuipers and McShays say and don't think for themselves. Just do what the draft experts say
Yeah,
you should.
maybe some do, but also maybe it's this idea that, well,
But apparently not, because Kuiper only got one of them, right?
yeah,
So
maybe also it's because, well, we have we don't want we're very protective of our turf. We don't want with these outsiders. Maybe it's more of an ego thing than an actual um scouting thing. I think there's like for the Royals, there was some debate a few years ago whether the Royals should just have a subscription to Baseball America and pick
that
their,
was our discussion, I'm pretty
yeah,
sure.
and oh yeah, okay. Well, I think we did it too. Like, should they just pick their draft picks based on that? And is that going to be better? And it's hard.
Well, because I think we had talked about what time trying to figure out if you could tease out if they're just bad at picking players, bad at evaluating talent at that level, or if they're bad at developing players within
Mhm.
the system that they have. And I think we decided the answer was that they're both bad at both. I think is what
Yeah.
it was.
And so I guess we could learn that with the NFL as well. What are they bad? So our NFL team, so are the scouting guys, are they bad at identifying talent? Both from a kind of commercial pundit perspective and from the team perspective, or are they bad at, because there's not as much development, I guess, probably in the NFL. There is somewhat, but like a lot of it's utilization and trying to fit somebody into a scheme and like adapting what you do for the player, because it seems like the players are more polished and ready to play on a at a high level.
No.
The careers are shorter than they are in baseball. Similar for basketball as well. Um, if it's a high round draft pick, he's gonna start for you and should do well if he's a good.
Yeah. Well, the best overall players, best overall athletes would probably be starters on most teams, right? Should be the case, right?
Yeah.
But I refuse to believe that people should actually listen to Mel Kiper. I will
Uh,
say this too. One night, just before the draft, I fell asleep with the television on and woke up with Kuiper blaring, on the television, and I could not find the remote, and became a literal nightmare for me because I could not make him stop talking, and I thought I was, asleep and having a nightmare, but no, I was awake and having a nightmare, Mike.
he does have a kind of Dracula type of haircut, Mel Kiper, so maybe that's the nightmarish quality. I don't know if he has the widow's peak that Dracula traditionally has, but he's got the kind of slick back, kind of tall, sort of pompadour.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I always thought he was he sort of looks like what you kind of picture an agent to be, I think, too, in some ways, right? So,
yeah, he's
but
got the pattern baldness. I don't know if you'd call that a widow's peak, but it's
no.
not. It's not a widow's peak. I think it might be, but yeah, he's got a little bit of that. Yeah,
Hmm.
he's got sort of that agent look. Yeah, for sure. I think.
Hmm. I just find his voice very grating though too. So
Yeah.
that's
Do you prefer the
not
dulcet?
not the voice I wanted to hear when I woke up, and that was apparently what was on. So that
Right.
was quite unpleasant, Mike.
Yeah, Todd McShay is a perhaps a pleasanter voice.
Hmm.
He's
Had I woken up to McShay talking, I probably wouldn't have, had such a nightmarish uh scenario anyway for myself. But oh well.
oh well. Oh well, indeed. We won't know exactly what's going to happen until on these drafts. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 years down the road that you actually know what if they're good or bad or not. So maybe that'll be a homework assignment. We can determine what some of these drafts and grades and things like that were for future years. Because next week on the NFL front, it's going to be a lot less news and probably will be not that much news for a while until training camp begins. Maybe a few things here or there, contracts signed and minor free agent pickups and things like that.
Yeah. So more Royals talk is what you're saying.
Yeah, more Royals talk. I guess we have the NBA and NHL playoffs to look forward to. I don't know if there are any other big sporting events um, coming up. The Kentucky Derby is on Saturday, so maybe
That's right. It is coming up.
we can talk about that. My daughter Marie loves horses, so we will probably
Should we bet on that offline?
yeah we can talk, we can make our bets for the Kentucky Derby.
Make
I
your
don't
make your trifecta.
yeah
Get your trifecta pick in before Saturday afternoon, Mike.
okay I will try yeah right now looks like Forte, I believe it's Forte, so I'm not sure if it's Fort or Forte, is the 3-1 favorite. Tappet Trice is 5-1. Angel of Empire 8-1. And then there's some 10-1s, 12-1. So it looks like there's no real big favorite, at least yet. 3-1 is the closest. So we'll see if we have another Triple Crown winner. We've had a couple in the last 5 or 6 years, and we had gone since 1978, I believe.
Yeah.
Since we had Triple Crown winner, so it's possible we'll have another one. It always seems, which is always fun. Those are the only horse races anybody really watches anymore. Horse racing it was the sport of kings.
Kentucky Derby is the first of the three, right?
Yeah, Kentucky Derby, and then we have the Preakness here in Maryland, and then the Belmont Stakes up in New York City.
Yeah.
But horse racing used to be the most popular sport in America, followed by boxing and baseball. So those were the three. Only baseball is. You think baseball's in the top three anymore?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And how would you gauge it though? By television audience? By in-person attendance?
Attendance, it's high still. I think you would have to say NFL football is king. That football is by far king right now. Because people are following the NFL draft. 300,000 people went to the draft.
It only takes. I mean, it only takes like 3 games, baseball games, to like equal about one football game in attendance, and they play way more games in a season than
that's true.
Than 3 times an NFL season.
But you also have television ratings and things like that.
Yeah.
It turns out that the Chiefs Eagles Super Bowl was the most. Turns out they reevaluated the Nielsen ratings to be the most watched Super Bowl of all time. I think they also said 50 million people in the United States tuned into the NFL draft at one part or another.
Really?
This time, so like it was the highest rated. So like people are even watching the draft. I think the CFL draft is this weekend.
But that Super Bowl apparently it wasn't not necessarily just the highest rated Super Bowl, but it actually says it's the highest rated US based telecast of all time.
Ooh.
So
that's pretty good.
More than just football games.
I was wrong about the CFL draft. The CFL draft happened today. I was thinking it was going to happen on Saturday.
So we're not betting on that, you're saying?
No.
Or you're supposed to say yes, we are, and then you get all of them correct.
I guess the CFL draft, they tend to draft Canadian players, born players, or Canadian. So the first number 1 draft pick was the Ottawa Redblacks offensive lineman Dante Bull of Fresno State. He was from Victoria, British Columbia. So I don't know if he was drafted by the NFL or not, but he was yeah. So then they had
I
the
thought you were
NBA.
going to try to make me do a mock draft for the CFL, and then you would just turn one in because it already happened with all the correct answers. So that was not what you were planning on doing there.
That's right. The Montreal Alouettes picked a guy from Penn State, who actually was signed with Seattle, undrafted. So maybe he'll go with Seattle, or maybe he'll go with the Montreal Alouettes. It's hard to say.
What is an alouette, by the way?
I think it's just the song, right? Alouette, alouette, alouette. It's a. Is it a dove? Is it? It's talking about picking the feathers off a dove's head.
This is how the song's been. I don't even
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I think it's just the dove. Yeah, a dove, gentle dove. Dove, I will remove your plumage, plumere. I will remove your feathers. I'll attack from your head, and there's other. Oh, it's a lark. It's a lark.
Hmm.
So not a
It's a
dove.
much
But
cooler song than I assumed it was.
yeah, like all yeah, it's a French song, so it's probably yeah. It's a yeah. So larks are from the family Alaudidae. So that's probably where alouette comes from.
There you
I would probably Alaudidae might come from alouette because those scientific names are often we're done in the 18th century, careless
go.
names, that sort of thing. But anyway, we won't get into binomial nomenclature this week on the Morning Trek Power Hour, but perhaps next week when we discuss more when we have more time to digest the intricacies and surprises of the CFL draft.
Yes. Really, it's all just trying to find other stuff to talk about rather than the Royals being terrible.
Yeah. Now, yeah, there's only one team called the Rough Riders now in the CFL. There were two teams called the Rough. It was the Ottawa Rough Riders and this is, I think, the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. But now there's yeah. So it's
The league imposed a cap, a Rough Rider cap.
yeah. That's CFL. Yeah, Saskatchewan Rough Riders is the other one. Yeah, and it looks like yeah. So they did the entire CFL draft today. I guess I don't know if that was available on TV in the United States or not. I hope it was. The
You didn't
Simpsons
watch it?
had a parody of the CFL draft, and it was on TV as a kind of boring TV thing that Homer was watching. And I believe I remember seeing. This is why I knew it was the CFL draft because I'm in these Simpsons groups on Facebook. The CFL actually uses the Simpsons still from that episode promoting the CFL draft, promoting its draft, saying the CFL draft is coming, and they had the Simpsons CFL draft screenshot.
Great.
I think so. Yeah. So anyway, I like good old CFL. You know how many rounds are in the CFL draft?
Not a clue.
8 rounds. There are 72 picks overall because there are 9 CFL teams right now.
Okay.
And it seems like about at least half the players were taken from Canadian universities, and maybe the other half ish from American universities.
9.
But some of the players were taken in both drafts, so we'll see which ones end up where.
Yeah.
I think the last player that played in the that was drafted highly in the CFL draft that I remember, or was taken by the CFL was. Do you remember Raghib Ismail from Notre Dame? Rocket Ismail. He was a great player for Notre Dame. He actually signed with the Toronto Argonauts instead of playing in the NFL, or at least that's what he was going to be. So he ended up signing with the Toronto Argonauts. He would eventually
Just because he didn't like who drafted him in the NFL, or
he was
he actually preferred to play in Canada.
signed for almost $5 million a year, which was a very high salary back then. Perhaps the highest NFL player was Joe Montana, only making 3.25 million per year. So he was signed for more money than any NFL player for the
Wow.
Argonauts. It was also higher than the salary. It's higher than the salary cap for most teams, but it was, I guess, a special dispensation or something. But he ended up getting drafted like in the third or fourth round um, that year, and eventually, in a couple of years, he ended up going to the Raiders. The Raiders drafted him in the fourth round to try to get his rights anyway. So, but he had a decent career in the NFL, but not as good as maybe was projected. Probably his brother Kadri Ismail may have had a better career in the NFL than Ragib Rocket Ismail Kadri, the Missile Ismail. We probably wouldn't call somebody with the last name Ismail Missile Rocket these days, post 9/11.
Probably not anymore. Yeah.
But they also had a brother named Suleiman who was known as the Bomb, but he never took off, and that probably would not fly
No.
nowadays. But we digress. We were going to wrap things up, and we ended up going down the CFL rabbit hole, which may be we talked a lot about Canadian sports these past couple of weeks, and because of the NHL and the CFL, and so maybe we'll do that even more in coming weeks, or depending on our legions of fans and who send us emails and letters every day. We will discuss topics more amenable to their interests. But now that's something we'll decide next week. Until then, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the One Track Power Hour. Please like and or subscribe to our little podcast / YouTube channel thing we've got going here. It's available in many formats and through many different conveyances, options, whatever you want to call them. And so good luck this weekend if you're betting on the Kentucky Derby. Good luck if you're watching the NHL or NBA finals. Good luck if you're rooting for a team that might have a chance this year. The Royals seem like they're out of it already. Maybe we could jump on the Pirates bandwagon, or maybe the Orioles bandwagon. They've been bad lately, but now they seem to be good again. So those are the two teams most popular in my area. But at any rate, until next week, we will wish you good day.